Hey, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, folks. This is Paresh Motiwala from a very cold and frigid Boston. Uh, yeah, it is, my friend. You have no idea. It's going to snow tomorrow, the first snow of the season. Not happy. So let's just say that. So today we have a exciting topic, and I don't know if my screen is being shared now or not. I don't believe so. Sharing starting now. Cool. Can you see my screens, folks? Can you just give me a message here on the chat? That'll be awesome.
Yeah, I can see your
Yes.
screen.
Okay, beautiful. Somebody has a question. Yes. All good. Cool. Beautiful. I like to see that all the time. So, hi, folks. For those who missed the PASS summit last week, that was absolutely fabulous. I had the pleasure of being in the speaker idol contest in the finals. Absolutely mind blowing contest. So today we have Armando Lacerda. He is going to be speaking about the topic Next Gen DBA. And my name is Paresh Motiwala once again. And what we have for you today is, let's see if this works. Yes. So first of all, we thank our sponsors, Quest and Susie, for bringing all these wonderful speakers to you and paying some sort of bill somewhere. Pass paraphernalia is now available for you to buy. I believe I picked up some of these socks. It might really help me in winter here in Boston. But other than that, you can pick up the mugs and whatnot. There are 36 virtual groups and groups that you can actually go for. I myself kind of lead the New England SQL Server user group, Boston Business Intelligence user group, what else? PASS DBA virtual group, and the PASS Professional Development virtual group. So if you are in the Boston area and like to say hello, please do. I would look forward to meeting each and every one of you. So join the PASS and grow your career. If you are here, chances are you're already a member of PASS. There's a lot of educational content that happens here. We meet twice a month and have some really awesome topics from our volunteer speakers like the one we have today. So without much ado, this is the handles. Go ahead and talk about us. We did not put our own Twitter handle here, which is dumb. I will share that towards the end of the presentation for you. And Armando is an independent consultant specializing in Microsoft technologies with over 60 certifications under his belt. Geez, that must be one big belt. He is a Microsoft certified trainer, MCDBA, MCSA, and every other combination of MC in a few technologies. And Armando is specialized in SQL Server, having worked with all versions from 6.5 to 2014 and Azure. Not 2016. Armando?
Nope.
Yeah. In his consulting work, he helps companies and development teams to use SQL Server to its full capabilities. So right next to his name is his Twitter handle. So please go ahead and tweet about Armando, like literally right now, and we would love to see you doing that. And I can actually pull out, I'll share the Twitter handle for the past DBA virtual chapters also. And without much ado, I will pass on the screen to Armando and make him the presenter. Yes, and you are live, my friend. So go ahead, and I'll
All
mute myself.
right. Great. Thank you, Paresh. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone, too. And Paresh, I am wearing my past socks. I did get one of those socks, too, and I'm wearing here today, although it is not that cold as it is in Boston, here in California. I'm in San Francisco right now, and I know that Boston's way cooler than here. All right, let me get here my slide deck, and I'm gonna put this in present mode, and I switch back to the browser when needed. All right, guys. So welcome to this session. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad I'm here. I put up this session together after the Microsoft Build conference early this year, like I think it was May this year. I was there. I work with SQL Server, and I'm being worked with SQL Server since SQL Server 6.5, like Paresh mentioned. And I switched to SQL Server technology in SQL Server 7.0 because SQL Server 6.5 was not that scalable like Oracle was back then, and I was also working with some mainframe projects. But then Microsoft came around with SQL Server 7.0, and I was seduced by the dark side of the force, and I really fell in love with the product and start focusing my career on SQL Server 7.0 on. And I've been following the Microsoft Data Platform since then. Paresh mentioned about my my certifications, and he said it was like a big belt. It's actually a big amount of days that I have lived. I'm 46, so I got a lot of years to collect those certifications. But throughout these years, I've been focused on the data platform, although I am a developer at heart, and I do a lot of development on some, especially in C# and web technology, but always focused on SQL Server. And when I was there at the conference, something called my attention there. So let me move on here. Again, this is my contact information, some of my bios there that Paresh has already mentioned. And yeah, something called my attention there. Because when we think about the DBA role, job role, and the career, we think about there are two hats the DBA can wear, right? There is this development hat when we join the development team and we have to help the team doing the queries they need to do. Sorry, something in my throat. The queries they need to do and the queries they must perform. So we analyze the queries, you see what queries are the most common ones, and we create indexes around those queries, and the queries that need special attention, although they're not very, often issued to the database, but they need special attention. So a lot of the things we do on with the development hat goes around here, right, in development support. But there is this other hat on SQL Server DBA role, which is about the infrastructure. So we go about performance on the infrastructure, which goes like, do I have the right file and file group distribution? Do I have the correct resource policy definition for the VMs running SQL Server on a particular server, and things like that. We focus on the disaster recovery and restore points through backup strategies. So, nowadays a lot of people, they rely, a lot of infrastructure out there, they rely on high availability to avoid disaster recovery time offs. To become offline, but we do rely on backups for restore points when someone breaks a table, destroys a table for whatever reason. Then we have to restore the backup someplace and get the table back and copy the data to the production database. So, and along those lines, the disaster recovery, restore points, security and auditing, and general status for the server. This goes under that DBA infrastructure hat, right? So two hats. We have the development support hat, right? This guy here, the development support hat, and we have the whole infrastructure we have to take care of, make sure we can, reduce the amount of concurrency that's going on in the database so everybody can get performance and things like that. This concurrency could be either physical in terms of I/O, but could also be in the query. So we also, it would also fit in here on the development support. But the bottom line, what I want to get you guys with me is, most of our work as DBAs, it's split in between infrastructure design and implementation and troubleshooting, and code troubleshooting, right? Development and query troubleshooting. And that has been my life as a DBA, and I believe you guys can relate to that, for very long years. For about the past 2.5 years, 3 years, I've been, my customers, they've been moving to the cloud. So I've been focusing a lot on the cloud, especially in Azure, not so much in Amazon Web Service, AWS, but a lot into Azure. And I have helped moving, migrating a lot of the databases to Azure SQL Server resources. And it has been like a natural movement for me, and I didn't feel much of the change. It's like when we are boiling a lobster, the lobster goes alive into the boiler and comes back dead because it was boiling without complaining, because the thing just moved and it didn't feel, and I was just like that. But then like I said, I attend the Microsoft Build conference in May this year, and Scott Guthrie was presenting there on the keynote on the Microsoft Data Platform, and it was talking about the cloud. So I believe you have seen this meme out there, Facebook or someplace else, about what's the cloud definition, right? So I just mentioned I've been moving to the cloud, but what is the cloud? And this joke here is kind of, there is no cloud. It's just someone else's computer somewhere else. Well, that's true, right? In physical terms, that's true. But there are some criteria to specify a cloud system. And the NIST, right, the North American Institute for Standardization, it defines that any cloud provider must comply with these 5 topics in here. So that makes the difference in between like a data center, regular data center, or a colocation service where you put your servers there and they run your service in a secure environment, usually resistant to weather changes and catastrophic events, things like that. So these 5 topics here, they make the difference in between a colocation or a data center and an actual cloud service. And one of the first one here, one of the most important one is this guy here, right? On-demand self-service. Meaning anything I want to do in the cloud, I don't have to talk to anybody. As long as I have an account and they can bill me, I can do anything that I need to do. At least, the most of it, like 99% of my tasks without having to call anybody. And that's a very important one. The other one is the self-provisioning computing and self-provisioning storage without human interaction, like I said. This goes in the infrastructure, the broader network access, the multi-tenant environment. Meaning we can scale this up as much as we want. And Elastic goes down here too. And pay as you go, right? That's like, you're not going to pay this bill by the month, but like if I put SQL Server to run on a data center right now, the guy will probably, okay, you have to have a contract for the month or for the next quarter or for the next semester. On a cloud service, it doesn't work like that. In a cloud service, it really is like if you put SQL Server to run for 10 minutes, you're gonna pay for 10 minutes. Actually, they charge by the hour. So if you put SQL Server to run for an hour, you're gonna pay for that hour. So that's what makes the difference. The cloud is not just another computer running somewhere else. The cloud is actually a collection of services that behave like this. And very important ones to notice is no human interaction, self-provisioning, on-demand self-service, and pay as you go. You only pay for what you use. So with that in mind, again, back in the conference there, watching these things, Scott Guthrie showed up. This is just a summary of the previous 5 points. So Scott Guthrie showed up and showed this slide here on his presentation. And when he showed this slide, when I first look at it, I say, okay, Azure SQL database, this is a cloud service they have in Azure. I'm okay with it. Postgres, I know how to spin this thing up. I'm not a specialized in Postgres, so I don't know the specifics about performance tuning there, but I know how to get there. MySQL, same thing. Redis Cache, that one I'm good at. And Cosmos DB, I also checked that one. I've been doing some projects in Cosmos DB. So with myself, I was like, okay, I got this. And then I realized, hey, hold on a minute. Microsoft Data Platform used to be just this. All of these guys here, they were kind of competitors of Microsoft Data Platform. But as a DBA vNext, right, the next generation of DBA, when I look at Microsoft offerings and what they have there, I can see that there are other database engines I could be using in my systems, and SQL Server is not the only one that's really Microsoft supported, because all of these guys here, they're supported by Microsoft. And don't take it from me. I'm gonna let you hear Scott Guthrie mention that himself. Here's the link for the YouTube video. You can go there and check it out. We already prepared the video to play here, so watch this. Just 1 minute clip. Watch this. Oh, actually, this was the wrong click. Let me get this one here. It's coming. There he is. Let me hit play.
Azure now provides an incredibly flexible choice of operational data services. Our Azure SQL database, Postgres, MySQL, Redis, and Cosmos DB services are databases that we provide as a service, which means we provide them as a database service with an SLA, and it's a fully automated managed service. This means you don't have to manually configure your databases for high availability or have to manually patch or update them. These are capabilities built into the services that we provide for you. We similarly provide built-in backup as well as point-in-time restore capabilities. The ability to easily scale up and scale down capacity at will very quickly. And a whole bunch more capabilities that are all just built-in features that you can leverage. This enables you to be much more productive and build applications faster while still preserving the flexibility of your favorite database of choice.
So there you have it, right? There was Scott Guthrie himself telling us what's the Microsoft vision and what are the Microsoft supported elements in the cloud. So all of these offerings in here, they're actually supported by Microsoft. And you have heard him saying that Microsoft, at the Azure guys there in the back end, they will take care of our backups. They will take care of our infrastructure and hardware performance. They will do all the infrastructure maintenance for us. So two big changes. One, SQL Server is not the first, is not the only option for databases in the cloud supported by Microsoft. So it's not competitions about options. All of those are Microsoft services. And the second one is the infrastructure. I don't take care of it anymore. So when I move on my DBA career, especially if I'm heading up to the cloud, I need to understand these very important elements here about what's going to be under my responsibility. So this is a very common slide we see out there about comparing what is on-premise. So this column here is you on-premise, taking care from the network perspective, from hardware all the way up to the application performance, like we had seen before. And this is when you go to the cloud. So SQL Server is not software as a service. So this S here means software, right? Software as a service. SQL Server is not a software as a service offering like Office 365 is, or Salesforce is, and a bunch of other software providers that they offer REST API endpoints to connect with their infrastructure and collect data from their databases. So SQL Server doesn't fit in here. What SQL Server would fit is in these two columns in here. We could have SQL Server in Azure as a platform as a service, and Scott Guthrie's presentation was all about platform as a service, or we can have it as infrastructure as a service. So as my DBA rule moves to the cloud, my vNext rule moves to the cloud, I will see myself working either on a VM in a cloud and taking care of SQL Server myself, again, infrastructure as a service, or I will see myself working with SQL Server as a platform as a service. So I don't take care of operating system setups. I don't take care of extra software to be installed on the VM, and I don't take care of SQL Server itself as the instance goes, right? As the settings of the instance goes. What I take care of by myself there, what I'm responsible for, is the data and the applications. So it feels like the application is collecting the data, right? So it feels like that my DBA role has been reduced a little bit, but in fact it has not. Let's move on here and see how that goes. I think, Paresh, your microphone is open. I can hear your computer bleeping. And guys, if you have questions as we move along, you can get, send them through the chat window, and Paresh will, break us here at any time. I'm gonna run this demo, and then we'll check if we have any questions there. But
so you want me to wait?
When I go here,
you want me to wait for the demo, or you want to answer the questions?
Yeah, yes. Let me just finish the demo here and go for the questions.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So what is this? Yeah, stay signed in, man. So this is an account I have in Azure, a subscription I have in Azure, and I got this. I'm a certified trainer too for Microsoft, so they give me like $150 a month to do demos and testings and these things. So I got a bunch of, this is Microsoft Azure, right? Microsoft Portal, one of the themes they have for the portal, this color theme there. And so let's say I want to have SQL Server running for a particular application I'm going to support up in the cloud. I can go up here and say I want to create a new resource. And the resource I want to create in here, like I said, we have two options. I can go infrastructure as a service running from a VM, or I can go platform as a service running as a service, not a VM. The VMs, we don't see the VMs, it's hidden, it's oblivious to us, it's just a service. So how does it feel like? Well, let's take a look at here. Let's see SQL Server as a VM. So I want to test if my application is going to run on a SQL Server 2019. So SQL Server 2019. Let's see if I get something in here. I do have three options in here. SQL Server license 2019 developer. Oh, look at that. Let me get this a little bigger. Perhaps you can read it better. So the top one here is not even running on Windows. It's running on Unix. Look at that. One of the Linux flavors, Ubuntu, Red Hat, and the third one, funny enough, is the one running on Windows. So just for all of us to get comfortable, I'm gonna spin this up in Windows. I'm gonna say create, and when I go here for the virtual machine definition, you guys gonna see here, got a few questions about how this virtual machine works. So let's see here. I'm gonna call this one here DBA demo, and this is DBA admin, or DB admin, better. Some password in here. Okay, I typed it right. Let me type it again. Okay, you liked it. Perfect. I'm going to create a new resource group here. Resource group is nothing to do with SQL. It's just, kind of a shelf where you organize the resources you create in the cloud, in Azure. And this is going to run near me here in the West Coast. So I'm good with this one. So I don't want to spend much money on this one here, but you see, this virtual machine, when I create a virtual machine, I have to select the performance for the virtual machine. So let's say here I'm going to have 4 vCPUs with the 16 gig of RAM, and that should take care of it. It would cost me $142 a month to run this virtual machine with the SQL Server installed. But this is not for production, right? This is just for that. This prices here is for development and test purpose. If it goes production, you have to add the software licensing, which is not included in there. So I'm going to go for this performance level in here, which we're kind of familiar with, right? vCPUs and this vCPUs and memory capacity. So we're familiar with those things. This is about networking, high availability. I don't need any of this for this demo. I'm going to just leave it the way it is. And on the SQL Server settings, hit OK. What is this? Oh, I need the public IP address, of course. I need to open RDP port so I can RDP to it later, right? When we have a chance to take a look at it in the next demo, this virtual machine should be up and running already. So we go for this guy here, and SQL Server settings. So this is the port SQL Server will be connected on the VPN there. I mean, on the local virtual network. the VNet is how they call it in Azure, VNet. No special configurations in there. I'm gonna hit OK, and it's gonna show me all my options, what I've selected. And in terms of use, I'm gonna hit OK, and that's that, right? In about 5 minutes, I'm gonna have a virtual machine running. Like I went to Best Buy and bought this computer there and got it running faster than I can drive to Best Buy. Azure will have this virtual machine up and running for me. So that was way easier and a lot different from having SQL Server installed on a virtual machine in my local data center. It's even more interesting when I go and say, you know what? I also want to have SQL Server and compare my performances, and I want to check if my application would also work on SQL Server as a service and a platform as a service. So I go here in the SQL database, and I'm going to see a different collection of questions here. For me, it's actually just one blade. So my database name, actually, I have to point to the server too. So my database here is going to be DB admin demo. And on the same resource group, SQL demos, is that my resource group? No, DBA demos. This is the one I created before. I'm going to have some data there from AdventureWorks, the light version of it. And I'm going to create here a server. Actually, I have one already. Actually, this one is running on the South Central, not here in West US. So let me have a server here in West US for this guy. So this is ALVS DB demo, my name there. So you see this name here goes into the public network. It has to be unique there. Let's do my DB admin again and my password. There we go. And I want to take this server running down here on West US. So select the server. It's going to create that server for me. And you see, when you do platform as a service, there's a very interesting element in here, which is the performance is assigned to the database, not to the instance. You know, when I created the VM just minutes ago, I assigned the performance to the VM, and SQL Server will be inside the VM running on that performance capacity I have selected there. Here is not for the SQL Server server. Here is for the SQL Server database. See, the database, and when you do platform as a service, being a DBA on the infrastructure side is actually defining the performance per database or for a collection of databases if I go to the last pool. So I'm going to keep it small because I want to save money. But, you know, I could get more DTUs. And what is a DTU? This is another thing that a DBA vNext, the next generation of database administrators for SQL Server, they will have to master, because in the cloud, we are completely, when you go platform as a service, we are completely oblivious to the hardware that's supporting our elements. So in many services in the cloud, what we have is what's the performance level you wanna deploy. And in this case here, the performance level is measured by DTUs. DTUs is a collection of IOs, CPU cycles, and memory utilization, memory speed and utilization. So as much DTUs I get, faster my SQL Server instance will be. And how to compare that to what I have on premise? Oh, there is, you can Google that later. I should have that link on my slide deck, but you can Google that later. There is a DTU calculator, DTU estimator, and it has some performance monitoring profile you can download, collect your server performance levels for a couple of days, and then upload it. It will estimate for you how many DTUs you need for Azure SQL database as platform as a service to support your demand up in the cloud. So we have this way here. There is a new way now that you can select by vCores and memories, but this is a little bit more expensive than the other one, but you have that ability as well. My point here is not to go really deep on these options. My point here is to show that as a DBA in a cloud, you have to understand the two options to deploy databases: infrastructure, which means you are in charge of the VM, or platform as a service, which means the cloud is taking care of the infrastructure for you. You just focus on the performance of your statements and the applications connected to SQL Server from a statement perspective, never from disk perspective or infrastructure perspective. So I'm going to apply this thing here and get this guy going too. So when we go back to the next demonstration, you're going to see some specifics of these two services. So they're all being deployed at the moment. Let's take a look here. It's telling me I got some money there still. Perfect. And both deployments are going on. All right, let me go back to my slide deck. So that was the demonstration about creating SQL Server on both infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. Paresh, do we have any questions so far?
Yes, sir.
Shoot.
One sec. Okay, here you go. If I can see them, that'll be awesome. Okay, give me 1 sec. There is a question.
Sure.
And I can't see them.
All right, I'm going to keep moving here. When you find it, you break me.
Okay, so it is, what about paginated reports as a service, giving a high SLA, scaling up and down with demand, etc., and priced in proportion to usage? This is Bill Walter.
Bill Walter. All right, paginated reports as a service. I'm going to get that in a second. Bill, that's a great question. So just to summarize in here, and I'll get to that one after the sequence of the slides I have in here, that will put that in perspective for everybody, Bill. But it's a great question. Hold that thought. So as you could see, if I go into platform as a service, this thing is done for me, right? If I need to restore, I will just pick and choose when to restore. Because in platform as a service, the backup is done automatically for me. And SQL Azure, I rather say, will keep my backups for 35 days by default. That's the regular contract. If you need more than that, there are ways to change that. Of course, paying a little bit more for the service. The physical concurrency is taken care of for me because there is a SLA in terms of how much throughput will be flowing through SQL Server and the storages. And that throughput, Microsoft guarantees 99% of that throughput at any point in time in a day. Security and audit stills on me because this one here is, can be something on the application, and also from the Azure perspective, I can turn on some auditings in there. So this one is on me. Development support, it's completely on me. And general settings, not the same huge amount of general settings that I used to have. It's going to be just a collection of a few settings we'll see when the services are already running, right? And when they finish deploying the services. So, like I said before, it feels like it has been shrunk. My DBA role has been shrunk a little bit, but in fact, it has been distributed. So follow me along here. This is the SQL Server box, right? When we get our media there, when someone needs to deploy SQL Server on premise, usually what we're looking for is, buy the license for SQL Server. So this is the SQL Server 2016 box. Microsoft used to be well known by being a box seller, meaning they want to sell license. The whole revenue, Microsoft's revenue, was pretty much based on selling license until the cloud. Now they sell subscriptions. And because they sell subscriptions, what was here in the box is not what you're going to see in the cloud. Like when I buy SQL Server, when I buy a license from SQL Server and I get the CD to install SQL Server, I'm usually after the database engine. But we know, besides the database engine, we have SQL Server and SQL Agent. Actually, we pretty much cannot live in SQL Server without the agent, right? We need the jobs in there to automate our jobs and all the other things that the agent can do for us, like alerts and everything else. But besides these two guys, we also have all this plethora of other services that comes in the box. So I don't know if you have deployed all of them, but some of them are well known, like full text search, like integration service, like Bill just asked about, right? The reporting service. Told you, Bill, we will show up here in my line of thought. So we'll get that in a second. So report services here, analysis service is also here, right? And analysis service has two flavors of it in the SQL Server box, is the tabular and the multidimensional, and a bunch of other elements in there. So the point here is when you when you buy SQL Server license from Microsoft to deploy on premise, you get all of this. But what most of people are really interested on is just the database engine and agents to automate tasks in the database engine. When you move your DBA rules to the cloud, all of this goes away because they are not included in the same subscription, and some services are not even in the cloud. So like the database engine, like I mentioned, it could be either on infrastructure as a service or platform as a service. But if I really want to take advantage of the cloud, I would not consider infrastructure as a service as my first option. It's actually my last resort. I should focus on implementing and deploy my solutions always using platform as a service because they can be better managed in terms of performance they deliver, and they cost less because I don't have to worry about peripheral subjects like infrastructure and disks in the cloud. So when I go database engine, I have an offer for platform as a service, which is Azure SQL Database, the last one we just spun up. If I need analysis service, I will have an option for analysis service in the cloud too. But this option here is only for tabular, is not for multidimensional. See, there is no offering in the cloud as platform as a service to run analysis service multidimensional. So when there is no offering in platform as a service, it means I will have to rely on VMs in infrastructure as a service. I will have, if I need that in the cloud, right? I have to rely on infrastructure as a service, which, like I said, it should be my last resort. And agent, look at that. Agent is not there either. So how do I automate stuff in the database engine? Well, the question is not how you automate stuff in Azure SQL Server, Azure SQL DB, but the question is how do you automate tasks in the cloud, in Azure? What are my offerings in the cloud to automate tasks? So it could be, there is one called Azure Automation. Azure Automation is one of them. If it's based on events, it could be Azure Event Grid. So there are a bunch of other options that in the cloud that are specialized to the cloud, and they connect to the database engine. So my DBA role on new deployments to the cloud should not like, okay, that's how I do on-premise, I'm going to do the same thing in the cloud. That's usually not the right way of doing ever. So if I need to automate things in the cloud that were already automated on-premise, I should go into the cloud and look what are the other services there outside SQL Server offerings that would help me to do, in this case, to re-implement the roles of SQL Server agents. And that's where the DBA role is going towards too, right? Making the mapping of how you do things on-premise, but in the cloud format. There are many options, and these options, they usually overlap itself, and when they do, is always due to pricing and scalability. So for instance, this is an example here of database services in the cloud. Scott Guthrie showed 4. I'm giving you even more options. Actually, sorry about that. Let me go back one slide in here. Let me go back in here. So Bill asked, what about SQL Server reporting service, right? My tabular reports, right, Bill? So your question here is, like I said, if it's not offered as a platform as a service, and SSRS is not, so your option, if you really need it in the cloud, is to run spin up a VM like I just did, and install reporting service on that one for your paginated reports. Now, the good news for you, this news was broadcasted extensively at PASS last week, the PASS Summit 2018 last week, is that Microsoft is bringing paginated reports to Power BI. So it's not GA yet, It's not general available. Generic. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm mumbling here. So it's not available for the general public yet, right? In Power BI, but in a couple months, I think they have a release date. I have to check that out. We will have the ability to upload our RDL files to Power BI, and we'll be able to browse our reports done in reporting service from Power BI service. So as of now, this is your option. But if you go and look at the Power BI website and see the where they're going with Power BI, you're probably going to see there's some estimate date when this is going to become generally available. All right, Bill? So that's where you're going, Microsoft is going with this. So again, you do VMs, you do infrastructure as a service only as a last resort. You always look around to see if you have it as a platform as a service. And in this particular case, Microsoft decided to go with the reporting support, not using platform as a service, but using software as a service through the Power BI infrastructure, which is pretty interesting. But again, back to this slide here. These are my options, right? Today in the cloud to store data as a platform as a service offering, and Microsoft takes care of the whole infrastructure for me. So for instance, this is our Azure SQL database. And you could ask, hey, Armando, why am I seeing these icons? Couldn't put the names in there? So here's a tip for you. You have to get familiar with the icons, because a lot of the documentation, if you look around in Microsoft Docs and some other documentation from other companies in there, they actually expect you to recognize database services through the icons. So like this one here is our Azure SQL DB. And you can match the icon in the portal, SQL database, SQL DB. If I go back here to the browser and I look at this guy, see SQL Server, this is my server, and this is Azure SQL DB. And these are, oops, okay, my services are deployed. I will get that back in a second. And these are the icons, you see? They got the descriptions in here, but the icons are also showing there. So this is Azure SQL DB. This is Azure Data Warehouse. So the next generation of DBAs must be able to identify when to use one and the other. Like I have SQL in here. I didn't show you, but there is a limit in here of 4 terabytes. My database cannot be larger than 4 terabytes today. This will increase in the near future, but today is 4 terabytes. So what does it mean? If I have a database that's 5 terabytes, does it mean that I should use Data Warehouse instead of Azure SQL Database? And the answer is a big fat no, because Data Warehouse, it's a product, although it has the name SQL, it has very little to do with what we do in SQL Server in terms of transactional processing. Azure SQL Data Warehouse is not your regular SQL database on SRIs, like with larger capacity. It's not. It's completely different. Just to give you an idea, you cannot create primary keys on Azure Data Warehouse, not supported. So that gives you an idea how different these two products are. So the DBA vNext, the next generation of database administrators, they must be able to go to the cloud and realize these differences and pick and choose what is the right software as platform as a service offering for a particular solution. Like here, I have Postgres and MySQL. When I go to either one of those, instead of going to Azure SQL Database, it has something to do with license. Does it have to do with supporting systems that are running on the cloud? I don't want to mess up with them when they're running on premise, and I don't want to mess up with them when they go to the cloud. It could be all of these options, right? Perhaps it's a hybrid deployment, and I need to keep code data stored outside my on-premise. I want to keep SQL Server transactional mode running on-premise, but all my archive I want to keep in the cloud, but accessible through queries when needed. So this is a SQL Elastic database. And it's a very interesting offer, especially for companies that must keep compliance with like keeping data for the past 5-10 years, and don't want to spend much money on storage that will be like idle there until some auditing guy shows up to check out the data. This is a very good offering. If I keep moving here, my time is running out. But if I keep moving here on the slides, you're gonna see that the hallmarks for the next generation of DBAs will be, again, selecting when to use infrastructure as a service and understanding when you are choosing infrastructure as a service. So when you go here to the portal, for instance, let me decrease the size of this font here a little bit. So when I go here to the portal and when I do like I did before, SQL Server 2019. So when I get in here, I see on the category here that all of these offerings here are compute. And usually when they are compute, it means they are running on a VM. And if they are running on a VM, it means they are infrastructure as a service. And like I told you before many times, your infrastructure as a service should be your last resort. It's usually less expensive than running on premise, but it's the most expensive you can have when running in the cloud, right? So you have to be cautious about that option there. Now, if I go here to databases, let me see databases. When I go here to databases, I see here that my category here, it changed to recommended, but this is VM. Let me see here, remove this guy, there we go. So when I go Azure SQL Database, it's not showing there, so Azure SQL DB. Let's see, see the category is not compute anymore. It's kind of a clue in here, but when it's not compute, when it's something else, more likely it's platform as a service. So like I was saying, the hallmark of a next generation DBA is understanding, am I spinning a VM and I have to take care of the VM myself? Or is it a platform as a service, meaning low cost, and I just have to check for settings, minimal settings when running that particular database offering there? So that's one of the hallmarks. The other one, yeah, so I just did this one here about identifying the service. So since I'm here, let me go back to my resource group here and let's check those resources we just spent. Here they are. So I have my SQL Server, well, DBA demo. That's the virtual machine, this is the storage. I don't see the SQL Server, so I put it in another resource group. I gotta find the resource group later. Let me get to this guy here. And let's see the settings for this virtual machine. So you see, when you are in the virtual machine, you have total flexibility, but total responsibility as well. So if I want to get to this virtual machine here, I can go ahead. Well, let's go from here. Connect and RDP to that virtual machine. Let's get the file in. And that's the file name saved someplace. It wants to save it. I'm using Chrome, that's why. So clicking here. I don't have a way to zoom into this one here, but I will get the virtual machine screen bigger. So my account here is DB admin, and the password is, sorry, this one here, password, long one, and go ahead and connect. There we go. So see, the virtual machine is running there, and while it warms up over there, let me show here all the configurations about the virtual machine. So I have the disks. This virtual machine got, let's say, 2 disks. I got the OS disk here, and there is a data disk down here of 1 terabyte. So if I want to add disks, I go from here. See, no hardware connection, no calling anybody to plug in new hardware there for me. New disks in this case. If I need to get better performance on this virtual machine, I can resize it, and the size is the amount of CPUs and amount of memory that I have on the virtual machine. So all the configurations I would be doing physically on a server, they're all available in here. And because this virtual machine was like from a pre-created virtual machine with SQL Server pre-installed, I can see the elements of SQL Server that are happening inside the virtual machine. It's kind of a specialized one. And all the elements of configuring the virtual machine is all here. But look how tall this thing is, how many options I have. So meaning I have to take care of these configurations, and within the virtual machine itself, is like running the virtual machine on premise, right? I have to come in here and perhaps join this virtual machine to a domain if my domain is already exposed through the Azure ecosystem, and get SQL Server to run. So I don't think that Management Studio is here. They usually ask us. No, it's there. Perfect. And the new version,
Yeah.
18. Yes.
Yeah, Armando, just a quick reminder, 10 minutes, okay?
10 minutes. Thank you so much. So, yeah, so it's coming. Let me minimize it here. Let's take a look on the other offering. So let me go back here to my services and look into types. I want to look into not all the services, but in SQL Server, SQL databases. Let me see. Yep, SQL databases. I should see the one that I have just created. DB admin demos. This guy, right? So this is the one I have just created in here during our demonstration. So this is my Azure SQL database. And as you can see, I have way less options in terms of configurations and settings because, like I said, or like Scott Guthrie said, as a new DBA of the new generation, I don't take care of the infrastructure. I just take care of performance and pricing, very important in terms of budgeting, performance and pricing, and how my database is being used in terms of the resources that are available to it. So it's relative, it's used in percentage. There's nothing happening there right now, so I can't see anything. I can use Management Studio for this if I want to connect to this guy. So let me whitelist my computer on the firewall there, add my client IP address. This is where I'm connecting from. Let's save this one here so I can connect from my local computer. Let me close this blade. This is my server. I'm going to copy this guy here and get into Management Studio. Management Studio is an option. Another option that new DBAs of the new generation will probably be exploring is called Azure Data Studio. It's not a replacement for Management Studio, but it's a tool that does a lot of tricks that Management Studio does as well. And for some reason, my screen here is not, oh, there we go. It's just too slow. So let me go ahead and connect from here just to show you, come on, how the new thing looks like. Here's Management Studio. So this is my server and this is my password for this guy on this server. If I click connect, oh, the account is DB admin. Go ahead and connect. There we go. So you see, I can use Management Studio here, but look, look how different this looks from what you see on your computer if you have Management Studio right now. All the settings about the instance, they are not here anymore. I only take care of the database. And even to create some stuff in here, we don't have those flashy user interface anymore. Like if I want to create a new user here, let's see here, I got security, I got user. If I want to create a new user here, at this point, Management Studio doesn't have a graphic user interface for creating a user. It's going to spill up a T-SQL script here for me to create a database user from command line, right, from T-SQL. So it's quite different, right? It's the same thing we're used to do, but even the management tools, they are not behaving like the same like they would on premise. So back here to wrap this up. Keep in mind, see, we're on this last topic, which is the hallmarks of a DBA VNext. One is to understand what cloud offering we are leveraging. If it's infrastructure as a service, or if it's platform as a service. The second one is understanding that there are multiple database offerings from Microsoft, supported by Microsoft, and guaranteed by Microsoft, not by third-party partners. It's all based on Microsoft. The other hallmark in here is understanding the requirements, so you choose the right database offering for the application. Like, this is relational. This is for compatibility of applications that are running on the cloud, on-premise, and you want to get them in the cloud. Cosmos DB is not a competitor of Azure SQL Database. All of this on the platform as a service, right? It's not a competitor of Azure SQL Database, because Cosmos DB, it doesn't implement like a transactional. You cannot do begin transaction, commit, or rollback. That doesn't exist in Cosmos DB. The only thing that gets close to that is when you create a store procedure, and any changes done in the store procedure, if the store procedure fail, will roll back automatically. But you don't do like commit or rollback. It's just, it works or it doesn't work. So Cosmos DB and Azure Data Lake, they are not competitors of Azure SQL Database or Azure Data Warehouse for that matter. They're just distinct offerings for distinct scenarios. Very important point in here, right? So they're not, you can have a scenario where you have to use them together, because they seem to overlap, but they don't, right? They work in distinct ways because they have distinct engines on each one of them. And when they overlap, when it's the case they overlap, is just because they have better scalability. Another thing is, and keep this in mind, my time is running out, like Paresh already mentioned, and I want to go through some of the questions you guys may have. But when you go to non-SQL offerings like Cosmos DB and Azure SQL Tables, you guys have to go back to hash bucket computing principles, right? When you create storages, not based necessarily on primary keys, but based on partitions and distributions. And then you have to create a partition key that will create a graph in the database storage where their data will not be like evenly distributed in between the partitions, and it will not be like skewed, like one partition with way more data than the other partition, right? If these were bars. So you don't want this, you want to create partition distributions that will look like this in order to get performance. So you have to go back to your college books and remember how hash buckets work and partition keys work. Last but not the least, remember the challenge? I mean, the space shuttle program. It was an awesome program. As a kid, I remember growing up watching these things flying. The rockets first, and then these guys. But it was terminated by President Bush. And if you look into history, history will tell you that President Bush said, okay, it's time for this to end. We have lost 2 shuttles already, and let's put it down, stop this one, and let's work on creating something new. But when you ask that same question to some of the people who used to work there at NASA, like this guy here, Robert Frost, what they will tell you is that the program that was aiming to get people in the cloud, if you get my drift, it was stopped because it was getting the program was expensive to operate. My point in here is, I'm using just as the space shuttle as a pun in there, but the point here is the next generation of DBAs will have to really, really, really be able to predict expenses in the cloud. Any company that wants to go to the cloud is going to ask you how much that's going to cost. And it's not like buy this server, $1 million, buy this license, $200,000, put them together, and you're not going to spend money on this one for the next 3 years. The cloud is like, you're going to spend money.
Sorry, Barry.
The cloud is going to demand expenses every single month. So as a DBA VNext, you really need to be able to predict, and the cloud, the portal helps you out doing all of that. So with that in mind, that is the new DBA generation. The DBAs that will be focused on application tuning, not in infrastructure. Will be able to use other services in the cloud that are not actually database related, but will help you to deliver the things you need to deliver through your database instance. And we'll be able to choose from multiple offerings. And most important of all, we'll be able to predict budgets so the company can make educated decisions on what services to leverage from the clouds. So with that in mind, do we have any questions there, Paresh?
No. There was one question which I actually answered, but for the others, I can possibly repeat the question and repeat my answer. One of the question is that I'm a new DBA and this kind of land seems to be pretty scary because I'm not a developer. What should I do? And my answer was that yes, definitely you need to get into development, and also you need to get at least into one NoSQL kind of databases and plenty of knowledge of cloud. It could be Google Cloud, it could be AWS, and of course, because this is a Microsoft forum, definitely Azure. So
yeah, I agree with you
so.
100%. But also keep in mind that from the DBA perspective, for the person who asked the question, when we say development, we are focused on how the statements, the SQL statements, the application, whatever language the application is being programmed into, it doesn't matter if it's Python, C# or whatever. But when the queries get to SQL, that's when your development hat goes in, right? You have to understand the query, what the query is looking for,
exactly.
If it's to change data, if it's to collect data, and what you're going to create around that query to support that query to run faster. So the development skills in here is your relational paradigms, database paradigms, your sets paradigms, and how SQL Server works with that data that's stored on those tables.
Cool. So thank you, folks. And Armando, thank you so much for your time, my friend. And I hope to meet you in person one of these days soon. If not in Idaho, at least definitely in Boston. Folks,
yeah.
An awesome rest of the day. And don't forget to tweet about us. Really appreciate that. And I look forward to getting your feedback. Well, there's somebody else came with one question. Maybe I can take it offline. Nothing.
Yeah, if you have any more questions, you do have the chance to ask today. It comes up later. You are, welcome to email me or, put on LinkedIn. I'm also there on LinkedIn. I think slide 2 shows that. Yeah, I'm also there on LinkedIn. If you want to connect there, you're welcome.
Cool. Okay, so I'll call it a day here, and I will see you guys next month sometime, okay? And if not, have a great Thanksgiving, folks.
Enjoy Thanksgiving. Thank you, Paresh, for having me.
Sure.
Bye.
Take care, buddy. See you, man.